Okay, give me just a second to get the Facebook
All right.
started.
We'll start as soon as we go live. Cincinnati, me too.
There's a lot of Cincinnati being represented.
That's right. That's right. What about them Bengals? They did really good this year.
Yeah, go Bengals.
All right. Welcome, everyone, to the Ohio Meet the Candidates event. My name is Angela Fobbs. I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio, and I'm a part of the Ohio team, along with my partners, Karen Lee and Nikki Vondervell. Today, also, Nikki is going to be keeping track of time for our candidates. Backing us up, we have a few people who are also on the team from who are honorary members of the team. Lauren, who hails from Columbus, and Kenton, who's from Toledo. And we also have the chair of the Youth Caucus, Miguel Madrigal, and also Rebecca Lammers is from Columbus. So welcome, everybody. I just want to remind everybody that there is still time to get an absentee ballot. If you haven't already got it, there's no need to wait. And please do ask for your ballot to be delivered by email. It's allowed in all 50 states, and it's the quickest and most secure way to get your ballot. Also, please consider joining our Facebook group, Ohioans Abroad. I'm putting the links for all these things in the chat if you want to take advantage of them. And you can also check out from our last Ohio event, we have a video about the state of play in Ohio from someone who's in the Crooked River Indivisible group. It's very informative. And one last thing, of course, we can't win this election if we don't have any money. So please consider making a donation at democratsabroad.org/donate. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Karen.
And I'm going to introduce the caucuses because we have 4 caucuses today co-sponsoring with us. And just to put in a bit of perspective, Americans outside the borders care about a host of issues. Some of those are particular to our situation. Some of them are global in nature, like global warming. And some we care about just because our friends and our family back home are affected. So our caucuses here in DA track all of these issues together. So if anybody wants to wave to the crowd, is Ann with us today, by the way?
She's not.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm here. Hi.
Oh.
She is there. I'm
there
sorry.
you
Hey,
are.
everybody.
Okay. Wave at the crowd. Ann Hess, Global Women's Caucus, and happy Women's History Month to you and to everybody else. You can check out their events also on the website, and I think we've got the link in here someplace for.
I'll drop the link in the chat.
It's our party on the caucuses list. I'm sorry, on the Democrats Abroad website. We also have Bruce Murray, who, along with Sue Oxney, co-chairs the Progressive Caucus, also known as Pro-DA. Lee Donald Moore waved at us earlier, but you can wave again, Lee Donald.
Hi, everybody.
Global Black Caucus. And the next generation is represented by Miguel Madrigal, born in Ohio, chair of the Youth Caucus. They've sent up some of the questions for our candidates, and they'll be helping us grill the candidates later. If we have time permitting, then we can also take questions from the audience. With that, I turn it over to Nikki to introduce our first.
Hi, everyone. I'd also like to quickly introduce the team that is responsible for founding our state teams and helping to develop and grow them. First up is Jennifer von Erstof. She is our state team coordinator as well as the Texas Abroad lead. We also have Teresa Ritterhoff. She's also one of our founding members and part of the Wisconsin state team. And finally, Carol Moore. She is from our Florida team and has been a key organizer in helping to coordinate these Meet the Candidate events for all of our states. And, you know, while our ballots haven't gone out yet, we were hoping to do this event and have the ballots already in hand. Today still gives us the opportunity to meet all of the candidates for governorship and for the US Senate and to hear about their visions for Ohio's future. So to get us started, I'm going to go ahead and hand over the mic to our Global Democrats Abroad Chair, Candace Karriston, who, by the way, was voted Vice Chair of the DNC Youth Council just last week. So congratulations, Candace.
Great. Thank you so much, Nikki. And thank you to everyone. It is really, really a pleasure to be joining all of you today. And I see just the breadth of where we have people in the world and where we have people voting in Ohio. And that is absolutely fantastic. Each and every one of our votes is going to count more than ever this year, and especially in battleground states like Ohio. So as Nikki mentioned, my name is Candace Karristan, and it is my honor to serve Democrats Abroad as its international chair. For those of you who might not be as familiar with us, we are the largest organization of US citizens living outside of the United States, and we're also an official arm of the Democratic Party. And at our core as an organization, it's to make sure that we provide Americans abroad a voice in US government, and also that we elect Democratic candidates by getting out the overseas vote. So as you know, there is so much at stake this year. We have 34 US Senate seats, including in Ohio, 435 US representative seats, including in each and every one of your congressional districts, 46 state legislatures, 36 governorships, again, including in Ohio. This is what is up for grabs in November of 2022. These are the offices where the decisions that impact your life, your family's lives back home are made. These are decisions, again, on reproductive rights, education, healthcare, even your right to vote as an overseas voter. So there is so much at stake, and we're here again to make sure that everyone is making informed decisions about who they're voting for, and also that they're getting the assistance that they need to successfully cast a ballot. If you haven't done so yet, please, please, please go to votefromabroad.org. Again, that is votefromabroad.org, and make sure that you get your absentee ballot for all the upcoming elections in Ohio. So just a few more quick words. Again, as Democrats Abroad, as we approach 2022, we're really trying to come at it from the perspective of bringing the elections, the issues, the candidates closer to you as overseas voters. And this is really important so that you know, again, who and what is on the ballot, and that our fellow Democratic state parties, the lawmakers in the United States, that they know about the issues that are unique to us as their constituents. So along these lines, I would like to also extend my gratitude to the Ohio State team, particularly Angela Fobbs, Karen Lee, and Nikki Vonderval, as well as Jennifer von Estorff, Teresa Ritterhof, and Carol Moore for their organization of today's event. Lastly, last but not least, I would like to extend a very, very warm welcome to my friend and colleague, Liz Walters, Chair of the Ohio Democratic Party. Thank you, Liz, for joining us today. It is an honor to work side by side with you. I can tell you, we haven't worked too closely for too long, but it has become very clear that Liz is one of the hardest working chairs that the Democratic Party has. She is vigorously advocating for voters' rights, including our own, so for voting rights for Americans, both at home and abroad. I know that the overseas vote has been keeping her and her team very busy over the past few weeks, and we're very grateful for that. I'm sure she'll say a few words about that and everything else going on on the ground in Ohio in just a moment. But please join me again in welcoming Chair Liz Walters to our event. The floor is yours, Liz. Thank you.
Thank you, Candace. Thank you, everyone, for being here. For me, it's morning. I think it's probably different times for all of you on this Zoom. I do want to say a word of thanks to Candace for her hard work. I see her at every DNC meeting, which is mind-blowing for me because I find them to be it's a huge lift and time commitment to do that work, and I live stateside. So thank you for always being present and being an advocate. I also want to give a special shout out to Nikki. Our paths crossed in Ohio as younger operatives. I think on the Senate Bill 5 campaign is where we first met, fighting for organized labor in Ohio. So great to see you. Always want to encourage you. I know you all have very important jobs and do good work around the country, but you should never be afraid to come home. Ohio you. We're glad we still have you participating in our democracy from abroad for all of you. So as Candace said, my name is Liz Walters, and I was elected as your state party chair in January of 2021. So it's been a little over a year, and let me tell you what a year it's been. Rob Portman announced his retirement from the Senate on my 6th day. So we were really off to the races in an exciting way. And I think 2021 and 2022 have offered us an incredible opportunity to really build something in Ohio that we can use for success, not just this year, but to really work to build democratic power in Ohio for the long term. Part of the work that we've set about doing over the last year is to really kind of kick the tires, assess everything we do. We've torn down and rebuilt many parts of the organization, from our compliance shop and our finance operation to how we're working with and approaching our partner organizations, grassroots activists, up to and including, how we work with our Democrats abroad. So we've been in constant contact with Candace as we navigate the redistricting process and what that has meant for your ballots. And I will give you a few updates on that process, as we had some big news come out late last night. These Supreme Court decisions at 10 o'clock at night are kicking my butt a little bit, you guys. So if I miss a few words here or there, please forgive me. But we're really excited about the team we're building and the work we're putting together. Last cycle, we made a big push to focus on recruiting Democrats to run all over Ohio, with a special focus on places that often go uncontested. With the help of our county party chairs, we developed a target list for township trustees, for school board members, for city councilors. We recruited and filed 735 Democrats to run predominantly in rural parts of Ohio. And thanks to the help of our grassroots network of these candidates running really strong campaigns, we elected over 300 new Democrats to local office last cycle. We are excited to share that the majority of those were in places where Democrats haven't really been winning for a while. So we've made a huge push in our suburbs. That march of gaining voters in the suburbs continues in Ohio. We took over the city councils in Gahanna, in Bay Village, in Aurora. And I'm also excited to share that we beat back all but 9 CRT school board extremists in Ohio. So with the help of our partners at OEA and OFT, our teachers unions, with our grassroots network, we ran some really talented folks and committed folks for school board across Ohio, and we're very successful. But we're also excited that we're seeing this rising generation of leaders in our cities across the state too, with our new mayors in Cincinnati and in Cleveland, who are exciting, dynamic, diverse, young, smart folks who are leading their cities into the future. And also really electing some talent in parts of Ohio that people think they should give up on, like Lima, Ohio, where we elected Sharita Smith, the first woman, the first African-American to lead that city, a town that Donald Trump won 2 times. So there's no part of Ohio we'll leave uncontested. The work continues. And as we move into this year, we are building a coordinated campaign that is going to really be the size and scale we need to move voters in Ohio. We started investing in October. To date, it's the earliest investment that the state party has made in growing this operation, particularly, but even before we have endorsed candidates or nominees in all of our races. So we have regionals on the ground, regional organizing directors on the ground now for 2.5 months. We've invested over $750,000 in the early build across the state of Ohio, and that is just going to continue to grow. So our organizers are working hard on voter reg goals, on recruiting community teams, so that we can really get back to that important work of talking to voters where they live in their neighborhoods, but also online, where they consume information and where they learn about elections happening in Ohio. So I'm going to ask you all to do 3 things for me today. And the first 2, I think, are going to be pretty easy for you. The first, obviously, is to vote, as Candace and as Nikki have mentioned. Put that request in for your ballot. I'll update you a little bit on what's happening for our UOCAVA voters. And all of Ohio redistricting here at the end. But please do put in that request. Make sure you're participating. If your calendars and your budgets allow, we'd love for you to consider coming home for the home stretch of the election and volunteering in your communities. We can never have too many helpers. So if you're interested in that and we can be helpful in plugging you into supporter housing or our program, please let us know. We'll be putting up some information gathering forms for that work a little bit after the primary. And the last thing I'll ask you to do on this part is to join our truth team. And I'm putting the link to that in the chat. We are trying to build a robust network of digital activists who share important information about elections and about our candidates with their friends and family on social media. We know that this is one way, particularly in Ohio, where the Republican Party has been outpacing us, and particularly in rural Ohio. And the only way for us to build those connections is by friends sharing information with friends directly. Algorithms, Mark Zuckerberg's brainchild with Meta, or whatever it is we're calling it these days, are really hard for us to break through without that organic share happening between friends and family. So if you would be willing to join us, we do some trainings, we do monthly check-ins, we're always sending out tweets and Facebook shares. It would be incredibly helpful and a really easy, I think, low time, low cost way for you to plug into activism here in Ohio. Now, real quick update on redistricting. This week was busy, as you all saw. On, I think, Wednesday or Thursday evening, the Ohio Supreme Court threw out the state legislative maps for the third time, ruling them unconstitutional. They have continued to maintain jurisdiction over these maps, meaning they have set a new deadline for the Redistricting Commission to try for the fourth time to draw constitutional maps that abide by the constitutional amendments that Ohio voters overwhelmingly supported in 2015 and 2018. They've given the commission even more guidance now. They've suggested that the commission maintain an independent map drawer. We're hopeful that they will, but we're prepared to, Democrats on the commission are prepared to negotiate in good faith. I saw that someone shared a link to a news story where DeWine is calling on Democrats and Republicans to work together, which I frankly find a little bit hilarious and massively hypocritical. Governor DeWine, Secretary of State Frank LaRose, and Auditor Keith Faber have had the chance to do the right thing 3 times now, and all 3 times they've caved to party pressure and voted for nakedly partisan maps that clearly gerrymander and disenfranchise voters all over Ohio. And so that's going to lead me to my last ask of you today, which is to, and I'll put these things in the chat here too, is to send a quick note through the contact forms to Secretary of State LaRose and to Governor DeWine and ask them to do their jobs. Hardworking Ohioans get out of bed every day and go to work with the expectation that their boss has of them, that they do their job. And we should expect the same things of our elected officials. They shouldn't be able to pass the buck and blame on the courts what is their job to carry out, which is to draw good, fair maps in good faith in an open and transparent way that abide by the Ohio Constitution. So the fight for the state legislative maps moves forward. You will have seen that last night the court threw out on a procedural matter the briefings, the request for further action on the congressional maps. Don't worry, we were expecting that. We thought that that might be the case. We are hopeful that our parties will have some more announcements on the next step for the congressional map fight early next week. So stay tuned for that. We do know that the federal bench is now going to be taking up the matter of the state legislative maps because of, not because of the constitutionality or lack of constitutionality of the map, but rather the timeliness, because the state legislature is refusing to move the primary. It is worth noting that our Ohio elections officials, the nonpartisan boards of elections or the bipartisan boards of elections, have asked the legislature to move the primary because we are at a point right now where it is very difficult for us to execute a smooth election with how long it has taken them to compile the ballot. LaRose's latest directive to our county boards has told them to prepare 3 separate ballots, 1 for every scenario. So you can imagine the level of work happening at county boards as they are being directed by Secretary LaRose to create ballots using unconstitutional maps. So we are in quite a bit of a moment here, and really the true solution to this, in addition to the courts continuing to do the work that they are doing, which is the unbiased analysis that we've asked them to do. They are a third branch of government. They are separate from the legislature. They are separate from the constitutional office holders. The courts are doing their job. Everyone else needs to do theirs too. And so really putting that pressure on Governor DeWine and Secretary LaRose to come to the table in good faith on this next round of map drawing and really participate in a true negotiation and discussion about what fair maps look like. So I'm going to put in the chat here the contact forms for these office holders who represent you and who get paid by taxpayers every month. And really, I will ask that you to take some time to just pop a quick note in this and ask these guys to do their job, to come to the table and have a meaningful effort to draw fair maps, which has so far not been the case. The wild thing here, and I'll close with this because I know you have other speakers today that you need to hear from, and I'm excited for you to hear from all these talented, incredible people stepping up to be our public servants in Ohio. But I think you'll hear a stark difference, right, between what I've just shared with you about the Republican leadership that's been in power in this state for too long. And it's never been more clear why it is important to elect more Democrats to leadership in Ohio. On one side, we have a group of folks who have put their hand on the Bible, sworn an oath to the Constitution, and completely abdicated that oath at every turn over the last 6 months in this process. And on the flip side, we have candidates who are here to fight for working families, who are going to prioritize the needs of working families in Ohio every day, including believing in fair representation and fair maps and much, much more. So I'm grateful for your time. I thank you so much for all that you have been doing from abroad, and encourage you to keep leaning in with us. And we'll try to keep sharing with you everything we know about your ballots and when you may expect them, and any procedural changes that come up. But in the meantime, enjoy getting to know your candidates. And thank you all for having me. It was a real treasure to be here with you this morning. Oh, the governor wink doesn't work. I'll pop it in. Works for me. I'll try to send it over to you, Candace, in an email. Maybe we can loop it up with folks too.
Thank you very much, Chair Walters. Thank you. And now we'll hand it over to Karen.
Right. Okay. I'm just checking. Thank you, Chair Walters. That would be the first thing I was going to say. And the second was I was checking for Mr. Cranley's name, but I see that his staff is on. Jada, is Mr. Cranley ready to go?
I'm here.
Okay, let me give a short introduction as soon as I find. And okay, here we go. Angela, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, great, thanks. All right, we start the important section with our gubernatorial candidates. They have a lot in common, least of which is their pledge to keep the primary competition on the high road, saving the hard fight for the Republicans. First up is John Cranley, mayor of Cincinnati since 2013, where he led a revitalization in job and wage growth, poverty reduction, housing affordability, and a high-tech GDP. A co-founder in 2002 of the Innocence Project, he's driven police reform for a safer city with fewer arrests. More recently, he's been spearheading an effort to invest in solar energy and make Cincinnati a leader in clean energy. John, are you ready?
Sure. Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
Great to be with all of you. Welcome, and please vote. Please vote. Ohio needs a comeback. Most of our lives, since the 1950s, really, Ohio has been in decline. Our population is aging, our young people are leaving. We lose a congressional seat every 10 years. We were the state of the biggest manufacturing base in America, the biggest middle class. The time was that the average Ohioan made more money than the average American. Now the average Ohioan makes 86 cents on the dollar. And for 30 years, one party, corrupt party, with their trickle-down economics and their divisive social policies, have driven Ohio into the poorhouse. Their policies have failed. In Cincinnati, I'm proud to say that we became the first city of 100,000 or more to make a comeback. And by that, I mean that we were in decline, like most of Ohio, with the exception of Columbus, which is a different, unique story, and started growing again. In the last census, we grew twice as fast as the state of Ohio. We reduced poverty 1.5 times faster than the state of Ohio. We have more Black businesses that make $1 million a year than any city in Ohio. We were one of the only major cities in America last year where shootings were down and not up from the year before. Our values and our comeback are democratic values, and our policies are working. If Ohio needs a comeback, we deserve a governor that's led a comeback. But let me back up and tell you a little bit about me. I grew up in Cincinnati. My dad's a Vietnam veteran. My mom's a teacher. Went to Catholic schools and was taught that the meaning of a good life is helping those who can't help themselves. I went to John Carroll University in Cleveland and Harvard Law School and Harvard Divinity School. People ask me, why'd you go to divinity school? I like to joke. I knew I was going to be a lawyer. I wanted to ask for forgiveness in advance. But with my law degree, in addition to my public service, I was the co-founder of the Ohio Innocence Project at the Cincinnati Law School, where the students work on cases of people in prison who claim to be innocent. And if we can prove it, we get them out. I'm proud to say that that organization has exonerated 34 people. I was the original executive director for 5 years. I've been to virtually every prison in Ohio. Criminal justice reform is important to me because some of these folks we've gotten out have become my friends. I know what prison does to people. I've been to prison, not because I was serving, but because I was seeing my clients. Getting people out of prison is really hard. And I tell you this part about my biography because winning Ohio is going to be hard. Turning Ohio around is going to be hard, but I've done harder things. In terms of harder things, Cincinnati did come from a dark place. On the Mason-Dixon line, like the rest of America, but maybe more acutely, we had deep racial injustice that continues to this day, but really boiled over in my career in 2001. I was 26, I'd just been appointed to city council, and our city was embroiled in an uprising and rioting, first after Rodney King, after our police shot and killed a 19-year-old Black man who was unarmed and posed no threat to the police. Our city was deeply embroiled in tension. We were subject to boycotts by the NAACP and the Urban League. Reverend Damon Lynch III in Cincinnati called the boycott, and the great civil rights leader, the Reverend Dr. Otis Moss Jr., helped to enforce that boycott. If you were to bet back then which city in Ohio would make a comeback first, we would have been voted last. With the help of many others and the civil rights community, we have changed Cincinnati for the better. We are the leader in police community relations. Between 2001 and 2021, shootings have gone down, but arrests have gone down by 50%. We've made our city safer by arresting fewer people. After the murder of George Floyd, I was asked to write a report for the Conference of Mayors on the Cincinnati experience. The judge in New York City who struck down stop and frisk cited the Cincinnati police method as the right way to police urban communities. At the same time, during my time as mayor, we took Black businesses from 2% of city contracts to 17% of city contracts, an 8-fold increase. We passed a $15 living wage for all city work and contractors. I helped lead an effort to get 2 years of preschool for all Cincinnati public school kids. I doubled our public transportation budget with a levy that became the first ever passed in my county for public transit. And as was mentioned, I'm building the largest solar farm ever built by a city in America. The city government of Cincinnati is carbon neutral. All of these ideas, racial and diversity inclusion. I should also mention we were the first city in Ohio to get a 100% score from the Human Rights Campaign, which I'm very proud of. In fact, tonight we have a big Human Rights Campaign dinner and a banquet in Cincinnati, the first since COVID. Investing in clean energy, investing in public transit, investing in wages. These are democratic values. We don't just talk about them. I've helped lead to do them. And as a result, Cincinnati is booming. If you haven't been here in a long time, come back. Our Over the Rhine neighborhood is one of the most beautiful in America. Restaurants, outdoor dining, parks, it's incredible, the vibrancy. That is in sharp contrast to what the Republicans have done to our state, where they've literally made us poorer and less diverse and divided us. This in the last couple of months, the governor signed permitless carry. It's open season on police officers who opposed that bill. He signed Stand Your Ground less than a year after the murder of George Floyd, a slap in the face. This is the same law that Trayvon Martin was killed, that George Zimmerman tried to justify his murder of Trayvon Martin with. It's no wonder that young people are fleeing our state. But Teresa Feder, my lieutenant governor candidate, longest serving Democratic woman in the General Assembly, a former Air Force servicewoman who is a veteran, public educator and teacher, who represents Toledo as a state senator. Combining North and South, executive and legislative, we are ready to hit the ground running, and we have a plan to rebuild Ohio and to get Ohio growing again. And there are many things to talk about, but let me just mention a few. One, we're going to upgrade our research and development at our major state universities, welcome international students, bring the best minds from around the world, and keep the best minds from our state in Ohio to innovate, to grow, to engineer. Second, we're also going to have jobs for people who didn't go to college, $60,000 a year, 30,000 jobs guaranteed to build the infrastructure that the state needs. Three, we're going to legalize marijuana. We're going to tax it. We're going to put the taxes into those jobs. And then we're going to create the first ever dividend of $500 per family per year, up to $75,000 of income, to help people deal with inflation and prices and build up that working lower middle class. The Republicans are corrupt and raise people's monthly energy bills to bail out a coal company in Indiana. Our message is to give people a dividend from the natural resources of our state to help pay their bills. That is a populist message that I believe can win. It looks like I'm being told I need to wind down this opening statement, and I look forward to your questions. So why don't I stop there? Last sentence. I know that people wonder whether we can win and whether Ohio can come back. I know we can, because I know innocent people can be freed, and I know that a city that was written off can come back.
Wow, thank you, John. Let's start with our first question. It's from Lee Donald Moore, chair of the Global Black Caucus. Lee Donald, would you like to answer your question? Ask your question?
Yes, sure. Thank you very much. What will you do to uphold diversity, equality, inclusion, and accessibility, especially when it comes down to defending the voting rights of people of color who are more likely to face barriers to voting in Ohio? Thank you very much.
Thank you. As I mentioned in my introduction, the journey towards racial justice and the journey towards human rights, LGBTQ rights, has been deep, profound, and hard won in Cincinnati and in my own career. I am convinced that Cincinnati would not be making a comeback and growing again had we not improved dramatically police community relations, predominantly between the Black community and the police, and improved human rights. We were the first city, I mentioned it, to get 100% from HRC, but also to ban conversion therapy, also the first city to provide comprehensive health care for transgender individuals. All of these things play into a culture of inclusion and welcomeness that lets people to want to lend their talents to your city and help grow economic progress. Obviously, we'll do, and then as I mentioned, we also took contracts from 2% to 17%. We will first dramatically ensure that the cabinet, the leadership of our state departments, internal team, et cetera, reflect the diversity of our state. That's very important. That's what I've done as mayor. That's what I've done in my campaign, and that's what I'll do as governor. Secondly, we will then make sure that the contracts that the state lets out meaningfully represents the diversity of our state. Three, we will be a champion for voting rights and stopping the continued assault on voting rights. The 2024 election, of course, is not too far away. And not only are they making it harder to vote, but I believe the Republicans and Donald Trumpists are on the process of not counting our votes at all. And they intend to just send electors to vote Republican, regardless of how the popular vote goes. Despite all the barriers that were put up against people in the last several years, we had record turnout in the 2020 election, the highest since 1900. So our people are voting with hard work, often getting over barriers. And I think the most important issue is going to be to count the votes and to actually have electoral college and votes represent the will of the people. That's why the Ohio Supreme Court's decisions have been so important, to make sure that our Congress and our state assembly General Assembly reflects the actual wishes of the people of the state of Ohio.
Okay, well, thank you very much. That was a very informative answer. Our next question comes from Global Women's Caucus Steering Committee member and the chair of Democrats Abroad Norway, Christina Scovesgard. Christina?
Hi, and thank you for the introduction that you gave. It was very informative. I have an issue, a great concern for the Democratic Party in abroad and the Global Women's Caucus about reproductive freedom. The new governor of Ohio will have a big influence on this issue going forward. For most of your career, John, you have been vocal about your anti-abortion beliefs. What can you now tell us to our members that will calm their fears that Ohio will continue to pursue, will not continue to pursue a terrifying anti-women's path, even with a Democrat in the governor's mansion?
Thank you for your question. I am pro-choice, and I promise that I will defend a woman's right to choose. I will defend reproductive freedom. I will defend Roe v. Wade. It's not true that I was running the other way most of my career. It is true that I was raised Catholic, and like Tim Ryan and Joe Biden and many others, I started my career in a different place. And I have evolved, I have changed. And if that's unforgivable, I apologize. But the fact is that I am pro-choice, and I will defend a woman's right to choose. It is also the case that my running mate, Teresa Fetter, I believe is uniquely positioned to help us win this race on this very issue. Teresa made history in Ohio by being the only woman to ever in the General Assembly to discuss her choice to end her pregnancy after she was raped while serving in the military. That is uniquely powerful, courageous sharing. And I believe it's the kind of testimony that gets people to understand our side and that government should not be involved in these decisions. And when Roe v. Wade, which may be reversed by the Supreme Court or dramatically reduced, you're right, this will be very much on the ballot in November. And there's no prize for second place. We have to win. And we know that even with the great Supreme Court improving the maps, that it's likely to be a Republican legislature that will attack a woman's right to choose again and again and again. And we have to veto that. And the only way to veto that is to get a veto stamp. And the only way to get a veto stamp is to win. Teresa and I believe we're the best chance of winning. And think about the debate stage in October, when I can say, and Teresa can say, Mike DeWine, John Husted, you believe that Teresa and or her doctors should be in jail. I believe she should be lieutenant governor. And we know that as many people have mixed feelings on this sensitive topic, that the 90% or more of people believe that a woman going through Teresa's experience and 90% of others, that is where the American people are. And that's where we want to have this debate. Because in the end, what matters is getting to a veto stamp. And Teresa and I believe we're in the best position to do that.
How much time do we have left, Nikki? 3 minutes. All right, so this will give us a chance to take some questions from the audience. Carol G, can you please unmute and ask your question?
Hello, it's Carol Graham. I'm from Cleveland, although I live in London. My question is, would you please outline your economic priorities for Ohio? Thank you.
Thank you. As I mentioned, I think we have to grow. And Democrats win when we're able to get the economic populism that attracts enough people to win. Barack Obama won the state twice. Sherrod Brown wins. Bill Clinton won twice. But then Donald Trump won. We know there's 150,000 voters in Ohio that voted for Obama and Trump. But they also voted for Sherrod Brown, and they also voted for Mike DeWine. Obama's people have written that the auto rescue was critical to the 2008 and the 2012 election in Ohio. I believe we have to find a way to grow the economy, but also build up the middle class, which is why I'm going to bring jobs to Ohio by upgrading research and development at our hospitals and universities. Why I'm going to guarantee 30,000 jobs are created every year that pay $60,000 to build the infrastructure we need. And those are jobs that do not require a college education. I'm going to pay for those jobs by legalizing marijuana, taxing it, and putting the taxes to pay for those jobs. And by the way, that is another issue of economic empowerment, and also ending the career inhibitions, I'm not saying that word right, that prevent people from getting jobs because of a marijuana conviction in the past. In Cincinnati, we not only decriminalized, but we are paying to expunge records of people who were arrested in Cincinnati. And we're going to put money in people's pockets. You know, in Republican Alaska, everyone gets a dividend for $1,300 from oil. In North Dakota, everyone gets a dividend for $300. In Ohio, the Republicans have raised people's monthly energy bills to bail out a coal plant in Indiana. I'm going to offer a dividend. Traci and I are offering a dividend of $500 per year from natural gas profits. And that will help people with inflation. If you're making $20,000 a year, $500 is real money, could prevent you from losing a car because of a broken tire and losing your job. These are critical issues to reduce poverty, shore up the middle class, and put Ohio wealth back into the pockets of Ohio. I believe this is an agenda that can not pit progressives and moderates in our parties against each other, enthuse our party, our young people, but also reach out to the very voters that have gone from Obama to Trump and to Sherrod Brown. And those are the kinds of voters that embrace this agenda because it's good for them and it's good to rebuild Ohio's middle class.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, John. We wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for being here. It was wonderful to hear what your plans were for Ohio. So, and now we are going to turn to candidate Nan Whaley. I am very pleased to be able to introduce Nan. Dayton gained Nan when she came over from Indiana to attend university, and she's been there ever since, first serving on city commission and later as mayor. And while Dayton has seen its share of difficult times, from the opioid crisis to a string of tornadoes and a mass shooting, under Nan's leadership, the opioid deaths have been cut in half. Pre-K, quality pre-K has been provided for every 3 and 4-year-old in the city, and businesses have been moving back into the Dayton area. So with that introduction, I hand it over to Nan Whaley.
Thanks, Nikki. It's good to see you. You know, it's Nikki was an RFD here in the Dayton area and from Greene County, so it's good. She doesn't seem to age over in Germany, so it's great to see you this way. And it's great to see you all. Thanks for making the time to talk to us about the governor's race. As Nikki said, you know, as a mayor, you don't have the luxury of saying that's not your problem. And the summer of 2019 certainly put a fine point on that for me. In the course of 10 weeks, we experienced a KKK rally that came over from another state to incite hatred and fear in our community. Less than 48 hours later, 15 tornadoes ripped through our center city, destroying property, a first time in Dayton's history. And then 10 weeks later, we experienced a senseless mass shooting where 9 people were killed and 27 more injured in the course of 32 seconds. On the evening after the shooting, we held a vigil on the same street where we had lost 9 of our neighbors only hours earlier. And when Governor Mike DeWine came to the stage to speak, hundreds of Daytonians shouted in frustration, "Do something, do something." I'm Nan Whaley. I'm running for governor because I intend to do something. Now, when I came in as mayor, it is safe to say and fair to say that Dayton was at a low point. We had lost thousands and thousands of jobs through the Great Recession, and we're still reeling from it. We led the country in accidental overdose deaths, and thousands of our homes were abandoned through the city. But as Ohioans, we take action and we do something. And so we were proud to bring people together and had, hospitals and nonprofits and criminal justice workers come together to figure out how to deal with the opioid crisis. We've first sued the drug companies. We're the first city in the state, the fourth in the country, to sue the drug companies to hold them accountable for the mess they make. And we won, bringing millions of dollars to local communities all across the state of Ohio. And we treated addiction like the disease that it is, trying to work on stigma and getting people the help they need. We cut accidental overdose deaths in half. And even during COVID, when the country had over 100,000 accidental overdose deaths, the highest ever last year, Dayton's numbers remained flat. We did this by bringing folks together and focusing on solutions. When our kids were entering kindergarten unprepared, we brought again teachers and preschool providers to figure out a way forward, and even the Dayton Area Chamber of Commerce supported our effort to provide high quality preschool to every 3 and 4-year-olds. We did it again by bringing people together. It's been a very successful effort and one of the national best practices across the country. When you invest in your smallest people, I know other investment comes. We've seen thousands of new jobs and over $1 billion of investment in Dayton. Again, focusing on solutions, even with people we don't always agree with. And I see this all across the state, from local communities working hard, trying to make sure that they can move their community forward, local leaders committed to this work. And they do not have a partner at the State House. The State House hardly ever considers places like Dayton or Akron or Portsmouth. On a good day, they ignore us, and on a bad day, they actively try to undermine us. And so that is why we need new leadership. So here's what I want to do as governor. I want folks' pay to go up, their bills to go down. I want to have a government that actually works for them. So what do I mean by that? First, I think we need to make sure that if you live in Ohio, where the best workers in the world are, that one good job is enough. Too many times in our state, I see folks working 2 low-wage jobs, still having to go to the food bank to make ends meet. We need to raise the wage, including raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour. We need to invest in renewable energy jobs. Michigan and Pennsylvania are taking our jobs of creating solar panels and wind turbines here in Ohio, where we have the best workers to make that happen. And we also need to make sure we're investing in small businesses. The state has not been a partner with small businesses, which helps all communities, not just necessarily one metro, to do better, but all communities can rise when we really invest and grow our own small businesses across the state. But we also got to lower bills. Look, I think we need to provide high quality preschool for every 3 and 4-year-old in Ohio. If you can do it in Dayton, you can certainly do it across the state. We also have to invest in childcare. We've seen 2 million American women opt out of the workforce because they cannot figure out childcare, and it does not pencil out. And we know this lays heavier on women. They still do 70% of the household work. And so these kind of decisions have really caused a workforce shortage, but also have had women have less choice about their future and what they want to do with their life. We can invest in our families by really investing in childcare and in universal preschool. We can lower utility bills by making sure we pay attention to consumers rather than those that are creating the energy, and make sure that folks can afford the utility, the electricity coming to their house, so they don't have to make tough decisions about rent, food, and keeping their house warm, which has happened this past winter. And then we can actually invest in education and invest in our local communities. So local communities and school boards don't have to keep on raising property taxes just to cover basic services. So I don't think this is rocket science. Get pay up, get bills down. But to do this, we actually have to have a government that's working for us. And I don't know if you all know, but the FBI has called the Ohio State House the most corrupt state house in the country. As I travel the country, other states try to fight me about that. I'm like, I didn't say it. The FBI has said this. And it is all around this First Energy utility bribery scandal. First Energy is a company so wealthy, it owns the naming rights to the Brown Stadium. And they bankrolled Mike DeWine's campaign in 2018. And in return, they got everything they want, including $1 billion bailout paid for every single month on our electric bill. It's literally a corruption tax. They wanted their top lobbyist to be the head utility regulator. DeWine appointed him, even though folks said no. And the FBI and the First Energy and the U.S. Department of Justice have admitted now, when they made their deferred agreement, that they bribed the guy with $4 million to look out for First Energy and not us. Look, the first thing I did when I announced we're running for governor is put together an anti-corruption plan. You can check it out at nanwhaley.com/ethics. The politicians have to stop policing themselves. We need to have civilians doing that work. It is clearly not working having the fox guard the hen house at the state house. We need to make sure that you work for corporations or you work for government, but you don't work for both at the same time, which is what we're seeing. And we got to close the loophole of anonymous money coming into our politics. So you can check that out at nanwhaley.com/ethics. Look, I'm excited about Ohio. I love this state. It has an incredible opportunity with the number of cities it has across the state, great workforce, and a place that is gritty, resilient, and innovative. But we have to have a systemic overhaul to our state government if we're really going to have the kind of state that we deserve. Too often we are on the top of bad lists and on the bottom of good ones. Ohio deserves better. The people living here deserve better. And as folks that come from Ohio and love this state, you know we deserve a state government that's much better than this too. I'm happy to take any questions, and it's great to see you all on this call today.
Thank you very much, Nan. Our first question is going to be from Bruce Murray of the Progressive Caucus. Hi, Bruce.
Hi, and thanks, Mayor Whaley. Here's my question. Across the country, we're seeing surging interest in and support for union organizing, particularly in the service sector. How does it look in Ohio? Or put another way, will renewed union strength help teachers, nurses, restaurant and package delivery workers, and maybe even manufacturing workers too? And what can you, if elected governor, do to promote this?
Thanks, Bruce. Yeah, we are seeing, great interest in organizing. Workers have a lot more power than they did even a few years ago. And certainly Ohio, a place that we have fought to protect collective bargaining rights. And I was proud to be the deputy manager statewide for the No on Senate Bill 5 campaign to protect our collective bargaining rights in this state. And, Ohio is really the only place we are surrounded, even by Michigan now, that is a right to work state. But Ohio is still stalwart on its right to organize and its right to bargain. However, we've had a number of strikes, particularly just in the past few months. I think the count right now, I think I've been to about 4 or 5 strike lines already these past few months where workers are using their collective power to, want things like a day off. Right? Because right now the mandatory overtime is really, really a challenge for a lot of our workers in the state. And I think as governor, there's a huge opportunity to continue to help, particularly with private sector unions, to encourage organizing and to really incentivize. In our jobs plan, we incentivize companies that treat their workers with dignity and respect and offer a fair wage. Those are often union jobs. So you can check out our jobs plan at nanwhaley.com/jobs, but you can see that it is very worker centric, and it's about making sure that we don't invest as a state in low wage jobs, but only good paying jobs, which are typically union jobs. So there's huge opportunity for us in this, but I am proud of our state's willingness and how we continue, and organized labor continues to fight to make sure that we protect our right to organize. I'm also really proud to have the endorsement of Senator Sherrod Brown, someone that has the message of dignity of work and is committed to this effort. He has been my mentor, and certainly we are lucky to have him, and I'm very honored to have his endorsement in this race.
Right. Thank you very much for that answer. Our next question comes from Global Women's Caucus member and DA Norway Chair, Christina Scovesgard. Christina?
All right, just had to unmute there for a second. I'm going to ask you the same question that I asked John. It is a great concern for the Global Women's Caucus, the things that are going on with reproductive freedom. The new governor of Ohio will have a great influence on this issue going forward. Nan, you've been a vocal supporter of reproductive rights. confronting harsh anti-choice bills put before the state legislature. What can you tell our members that will calm their fears that Ohio will not continue to pursue the terrifying anti-woman's path with a Democratic woman in the governor's mansion?
Christina, thank you for your concern on this issue and thanks for your activism around it. Look, this is something that I've worked my entire career on, and I'm proud of the work that I've done with NARAL to keep actually abortion access open in Dayton while I was mayor. You know, taking actions that necessarily weren't in the realm of mayor, but using the bully pulpit to make sure that we protected a woman's right to choose and making sure that they had access in my community to make that happen. So this is very personal to me, and I'm the only candidate, Democrat or Republican, that has spent my entire career protecting the rights of women and the rights of access for abortion. Look, as governor, I will say this: I will veto any bill that affects access of a woman's access to abortion, and I will appoint a health director that is actually a partner in folks in the groups that are working to encourage and increase access in the state. Right? When Roe falls, we need to make sure that we have a governor that has been fighting this their entire career, because it is too important. The governor's office is the last place for women's access and women's protection to access to abortion. Right now, you don't have to take my word for this. You know, I'm really proud that both myself and my lieutenant governor candidate, Sheryl Stevens, have been committed our whole career to this effort. As women, we know how important this is. But take the word of Planned Parenthood Action Fund, Pro-Choice Ohio, the Feminist Majority, any group that has been spending their time and efforts solely on this have endorsed my campaign. And so we have got to make sure that we protect this in Ohio across all cities.
All right, our next question comes from a member of the audience. Kenton Barnes, could you please unmute? And while he's doing that, let me just say, if anyone would like to ask a question, please type * hand up in the chat. Thank you. Kenton?
All right, thank you. I also saw that Colleen Blake had her hand up as well, so just to point that out. My name is Kenton Barnes, and I'm from Ohio 9, so up in the northwest corner of the state. And my question to you is regarding the unequal distribution of work and contracts and things throughout the state, particularly with the 3 Cs. You being yourself a mayor from Dayton, know that the disparity between the contracts and the economic opportunities that go to the 3 Cs as opposed to other cities in the state. How would you make sure that there's economic parity between the different regions of the state?
Kenton, I think you nailed it on how most of us all feel that if we don't belong to a city that begins with C, and I'm not talking about Chillicothe here, right? So, for us, I think when we look at our jobs plan, we're really cognizant of the fact that we've only had one metro that's really growing, and that's the Columbus Metro. And we see a lot of investment there, and we don't begrudge Columbus for that investment, but we know that the state could do a lot more in leveraging the growth across other communities that are smaller. And so one of the keys is really investing in small business. And, I define small business as businesses less than 50 or less employees. I know the federal government talks about 500 employees or less. Those are pretty large businesses if you're in Portsmouth or Zanesville, right? So I'm talking about these small businesses. And there's a lot more the state could do to really drive investment. And frankly, this helps women and African-American owned businesses as well in our communities, because they tend to start smaller and grow our own across the state. So that's our commitment. We think that will help with parity. Secondly, we need to pay greater attention on these really big investments that we see across the state. On the same day that they announced Intel, which is great. It is great for the Columbus Metro. They also 2 weeks later announced that Peloton was pulling out of the Toledo market. And that was 2,000 jobs that they had already cut the ribbon on, right? So we need to make sure that the companies that the state makes their agreements with, they hold to it. And this isn't just about, the governor getting a nice ribbon cutting and then the jobs never come, right? So these are the 2 key points I think that are really important. But certainly, as the mayor of Dayton and someone that comes from Dayton, I do have that chip on my shoulder that the rest of the state has. It's why I've visited 77 of the 88 counties so far. We're heading out this week to see the rest of them. So we can really make sure that we're hearing from everybody in every community and that we can really invest in them. But I think small business investment from the state at a much bigger rate is what's really key for this.
All right, we have our next question is from Colleen Blake. Colleen, could you unmute and ask your question, please? Colleen, are you there?
Oh, she looks like she might be frozen.
Yeah, maybe. Let's come back to Colleen, and we'll go to Dr. Kelly Simon. Kelly, do you want to ask your question?
Yep. Hey, Nan, thanks very much. And thank you, Angela. So my research was basically on looking at census tracts of climate change and intersectionalities of race and poverty along the Northeast Ohio shoreline. So I think it's great that we're looking at putting in equity and parity, etc. But we have to look at some sort of past dependencies of types of policies that are actually in place beforehand, because otherwise we're not going to have actual equity, right? And so in terms of like an actual just climate and equity policy, are you putting any type of energy into your campaign on this? If not, you should, because Northeast Ohio has like 22% of Great Lakes, 22% of the world's, surface freshwater.
Right. So I'm a signer of what we call, I don't know if you've seen it, Dr. Simon, the Marshall Plan for Middle America. And there was a lot of mayors that signed on through the Ohio River Valley, particularly as we've said, like you're talking about Northeast protection of water, et cetera, and climate there. But, really making sure that when fossil fuel technology is coming off, that the investment comes in places that have really used their land to basically fund our, work as a country, right? And so the Marshall Plan is really about like, hey, we have to make sure that the investment for renewable energy and the new technologies come into these communities that have been heavy fossil fuel providers. And, this is deeper. I think it's an equity issue overall, but secondly, it's a democracy issue, right? Because if we just take jobs out and jobs go away from places, the democracy, we saw this in the 2016 election, the democracy falters. And there's been, we've seen this with bad trade deals too in the state. The trade deals overall have affected certain communities, and the answer mostly from both parties has been, well, people can just move and find a job wherever. And that's not what happens, because they have ties and they have families and decisions they have to make about childcare, et cetera. And so then what happens is nobody cares about me. Nobody cares about my family here. And so making sure that we have real investment in places that have seen significant loss is a special equity question. Now, I'll also say in our African-American communities across the state, we have to be intentional in the investment there too, right? Because, policies nationally tell basically 1972 and even further. I can talk about how the telecoms are terrible to, our African-American communities, making decisions that are just legalized redlining today. We have to make sure that we invest more in the places that have been discriminated against. And that's up to the state and federal government to make that happen. So yes, there's a big equity portion of this work. Sheryl Stevens, who is my lieutenant governor, is really also very passionate about the work, particularly around affordable housing and making sure that home ownership and wealth building, particularly in African-American communities, starts to happen. I don't know if you saw just a few weeks ago, the National Board of Realtors released the disparity between Black owned and white owned home ownership is even getting greater. So the wealth creation is getting tougher and tougher. Nikki told me my time is up. I could talk a lot more about this, Dr. Simon, but appreciate your commitment to this work.
Well, Thank you very much, Nan. And I'd also like to thank John, both of you coming today. We wish you both the best of luck in your endeavors, although there can be only one. So good luck. Everyone remember to vote. Go to votefromabroad.org, and I'm putting both their websites in the chat. Be sure to go ahead and take a look at what else they have to say. And we're going to move on to our 3 candidates for U.S. Senate. So let me just make a quick check. Is Morgan Harper here? I thought you.
Yes, I am on.
Awesome. Super. I just saw you leave and didn't know if you came back.
Yeah, I had to move to the car, so I am going to be in transit now.
Oh, no problem. Not a problem at all. Okay, so our first U.S. Senate candidate is Morgan Harper. She is a native from Columbus and is a consumer protection attorney whose life experience shaped her worldview. Raised by a teacher who struggled solo to raise 2 kids, Morgan adopted that work model and pursued a career in law. She served among other posts as a law clerk and later as the advisor to the U.S. Consumer Finance Protection Bureau. During the pandemic, she co-founded Columbus Stand Up to deliver masks and drive people to vaccine appointments and to get to the polls in 2020. Morgan, please go ahead. Welcome.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Angela. And if it's cutting out at any point, just let me know because I'm on the road, so it might be a bit choppy. But no, thank you so much for the opportunity to be with Democrats Abroad today. Really excited to talk to all of you and share more about the campaign. So as was mentioned, my name is Morgan Harper. I'm running for the open United States Senate seat. And a big reason why I find myself in politics altogether just has to do with some of my experiences here in Ohio early on. I was born at the Ohio State University Hospital, given up for adoption. I lived in a foster home when I was a baby and then was adopted and raised on the east side of Columbus by my mom. And, like a lot of us, we went through a lot, but it became very clear to me early on that the reason why we were able to navigate challenges and restabilize was a couple of things. One, I had even, one parent with a stable job. My mom worked in the public school system, but more importantly, in a lot of ways, we had a strong community around us that would not let us slip behind and were able to show up and have the wherewithal themselves to lend a hand and look out for us. And so it was that really put me in the position and allowed my mom to pour everything into my education. I was able to get scholarships to go to Princeton University, Stanford Law School. And, but I saw, as I was away, a lot in Ohio was changing and it was becoming increasingly difficult for many people to not just get by and have the opportunity to access the potential that I was able to take advantage of, but really just even to survive. And so when I got to Washington, as was mentioned, working at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau after the financial and foreclosure crisis that hit Ohio so hard, I really started to understand why. There have been forces and dynamics at play in Washington fueled by special interest money that, while we were doing what we could to go after the big banks that were responsible for that crisis and holding them accountable, that were actually, forces that were trying to slow progress and protect those same interests instead of looking out for us. And for that to change, really saw very clearly that we needed to have better leadership, new leadership that was going to be able to forge a new path forward for Ohio and to make sure that in a lot of ways that I am able to represent and my story is able to be a lot more people's story in being able to access opportunity and live out our potential. That's the American dream. Everybody gets a fair shot. And so that's why I'm running for the United States Senate in order to make that happen. And what that looks like to me from a policy perspective is actually fairly straightforward. And, many of the things that Nan Whaley just mentioned are true at the federal level as well, that we need to make sure that we are creating jobs that are going to keep up with the cost of living. I am proposing that we create incentives and investment at the federal level and the clean energy sector, that those are going to be jobs of the future that are higher paying, up to 600,000 of them over the next 10 years. That we need to ensure that we have a workforce that is able to access training and education to work those jobs that will not put people in debt. So debt-free training, education is an absolutely critical part of this. And we need to ensure basic building block that people are healthy. And I support Medicare for all, ensuring access to healthcare for everyone, including, importantly, mental health care, which is one of the biggest issues facing our state, regardless of what your employment situation is. That, I believe, is absolutely essential to be able to continue to be a state of the future and have a stable workforce. And then we need to do some emergency measures, increase the federal minimum wage, since we have seen that wages haven't kept up with the cost of living, to continue to ensure that folks are able to meet all of their essential needs. And these things are not complicated. I don't at all purport to be creating or reinventing the wheel here or anything like that. But we need to be honest about the fact that what got us to this place has been a failure of movement and urgency at the federal level. And we have the opportunity here in this election in 2022 to really chart a new path forward. And that's so exciting. And, especially as we're now just a few weeks, really, we think, away from the primary date, we as Democrats have the opportunity to put us in a position that is going to make us most competitive to be able to fend off what's been happening on the far right and the folks that are running in the Republican primary for the seat that do not have our best interests at heart, that are not presenting any policy proposals, that do not care about making government work for anyone but themselves and the special interests who fund them. And in order to beat that, in order to have a US Senator that is going to make sure that we are getting resources to our communities all over the state and guaranteeing opportunity for everyone, we have to have a candidate and a campaign that is going to mobilize historic levels of turnout for Democrats all over the state of Ohio. It is absolutely essential that we run up the numbers here. There are more of us than there are of them, but if folks don't care or they don't believe it or they're not paying attention, it will not happen. And so I believe that I am the candidate to put together that coalition. I look forward to working with all of you to make that happen. And I think we can all agree the stakes could not be higher right now for us to win, not just to get me elected to the United States Senate, but really to have one of us, an Ohioan that understands what the struggles have been for so many people across our state for the last 20 years and is going to move with absolute urgency to be able to implement an agenda that is going to ensure, just like I am so grateful that I had the chance to live out my potential, that is the story for every person in Ohio at all stages of life moving forward. So I'll pause there. I look forward to answering any questions. And again, thank you very much for the opportunity to be with you all today.
Thank you very much, Morgan. Our first question is from Miguel Madrigal. He's the chair of our youth caucus. Miguel?
Good morning. Good morning. How are you, Morgan? My name is Jose Miguel Madrigal. As you, I was also born at the Ohio State University Hospital. I am also from Columbus, and I was born on 4th, 1995. So it's an honor to be here with you. I wish all the candidates running for Ohio luck. And before I go into my question, I want to replicate the words of what the Ohio State chair said. She said, everybody should go canvass. And as a canvasser, I went to Georgia to canvass for John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock. We should do the same thing in Ohio. I'm looking forward to possibly canvass in Ohio come November. So my question for you is, 45 million people nationwide are currently saddled with student debt loan. Most federal student loan payments have been on pause since early in the pandemic, but are slated to expire on May 1st. If you were in the Senate right now, what would you do to make sure the moratorium continues to bring relief to hard-pressed debtors?
Yeah, well, first, very happy to connect with another Ohio State baby. So that's really cool. And I would just, in response to one other thing you said, and this gets back to how I was ending my remarks. I mean, we can't wait for November here. On any given Tuesday, or any day of the week, Josh Mandel, these other guys can show up and have hundreds of people who are listening to them. So that building, that organization, that mobilization needs to be happening as soon as it can in that engagement. And certainly if anyone wants to be a part of our campaign, we are doing that now. We have our volunteer. I'm actually on my way, which is why I'm in the car on the way to an organizing rally. We need to be getting out there ASAP to be able to start to build the type of turnout that we're going to need in November for a Democrat to win this seat. But getting to your specific question on the student debt relief, I mean, I am really pushing, and I have saying that I think we need to be canceling more of the debt. So not just having these moratoriums and extending them, which I would absolutely support and needs to happen. And it has been a relief to people during the pandemic. But we need to be honest about the fact that we have a much bigger issue on our hands, that we have not just young people, not just people in their 30s, not just people in their 40s, but now also senior citizens, elderly folks who are on the hook for student debt that has been accumulated in often predatory ways over the past 20 years. And in order to do something about that, we need to cancel student debt. This is not just this is not a giveaway. This is going to be an economic stimulus for working people across this country. We have seen that at the federal level, we are willing to provide such supports to very large multinational corporations in the form of tax breaks, that we have people who are making millions and billions of dollars who, from a proportionality tax rate perspective, are paying less than those of us who are just regular working people. This needs to stop. We need to cancel student debt. We need to free up multi-generations of people who are on the hook for this so that folks can invest in building their lives, buying homes, having families, building the strong communities that made my story possible and are absolutely essential for us to continue to be a state of the future where opportunity is guaranteed for everyone.
All right, thank you. Our next question is from Lee Donald Moore. He's the chair of our Global Black Caucus.
Yes. Hi, Morgan. Great having you with us today. And I love your energy you're bringing to the table, your passion. That's what we need. So my question for you is, how will you support, protect, and include Black, Indigenous people of color and LGBTIQ+ policies? Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the question. Well, this is really at the core of everything that I'm about. I mean, I am Black. I care deeply about justice for everyone, and this should just be a given for anyone who is, I believe, seeking any type of elected office in our state, in our country. Unfortunately, we know that is not the case, but you can certainly count on that being a top priority for me. And so, you know, when it comes to supporting the Black community across Ohio, I believe that a lot of the policies that I am advocating for would do that, including things like raising the minimum wage, including things like ensuring that we are doing debt focused on, but that needs to be discussed to ensure that we are advocating with a coalition that's going to be able to push to get that policy implemented, not just talked about. And then also I would proudly co-sponsor the Equality Act, would ensure that we do not have folks from the LGBTQ+ community that are facing discrimination, both in accessing healthcare, jobs, housing, for example. And you know, I know that that has not always been the position of everyone who is running in this race, but I firmly believe that that I would be a co-sponsor and need to pass the Equality Act to ensure that that's possible.
All right, we have a couple of questions from the floor. Our first question is from Nadia Cesarda. I'm still saying that totally wrong.
Yes.
Yes.
Hello.
Okay. Hi.
Hello. Hello.
Hi.
I'm from Georgia, which is really near from the Ukraine. So I have a question about, my question will be really general, but it's about the condition and exciting condition in Ukraine. And my question is, I really want to understand your as a political attitude about the concept to close the sky over the Ukraine. Thank you.
Sorry, I couldn't quite make out your question. Would you mind repeating that?
Yes. I really want to understand your attitude about the concept to close the sky over the Ukraine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I mean, right now, and it's really devastating. And thank you for the question. I hope that I know you're closer to the conflict directly and what's going on, that you're staying safe. We need to make a strong stand against Putin and everything that's going on. He's authoritarian. He's not listening to his own people, and so that's why I've been outspoken about the need for having sanctions, economic sanctions that are going to send a strong signal that as a global community and as a country, we are not going to accept this type of invasion and disregard for human rights and human life. And so I do support that. I mean, when we're thinking about things beyond that, I do think that we need to be very careful just in what some of those lines that we're drawing are, and what is our appetite for following through with some of those, more, I would say, aggressive positions that we might take. So right now, as I've said, I've been firm in the implementation and support for aggressive economic sanctions, but I haven't, and I don't currently advocate for moving beyond that at this point.
All right, our next question is from Rebecca Lammers. She is our taxation task force chief. Rebecca, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, hi Morgan. Since you're running for Senate, I'd like to bring to your attention the top congressional issue for Americans living abroad, which is voting and taxes. So most people in the US don't realize that taxes are a barrier to voting for Americans abroad. Most abroad are working and middle class, and the tax code as it currently stands is too complicated for Americans abroad to comply with due to Congress's outdated stereotype that we're all rich and leave the country to evade taxes, when actually most of us are low and middle income who moved abroad for work or love. Democrats Abroad does a lot of work to educate everyday Americans abroad that voting is a federal right, and regardless of their tax status, they have a right to vote. This is why Americans who are truly resident abroad, Democrats Abroad supports elimination of double filing and double taxation on non-US sourced income, and the exemption of Americans abroad and non-US banks from having to report accounts to the US. Will you support this relief for Americans abroad?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I do support that. I think you're absolutely right. There is this perception that it's only rich folks who are able to move abroad and are doing that. And it is a lot to evade some of the obligations of our tax code. And so, yeah, I support really reviewing the tax code holistically to make sure that it is implemented in a way that is equitable and not overly burdensome to working people while providing loopholes for large multinationals and folks who are earning more money. And so this certainly fits within that situation. We're just working people, and that doesn't, oh, yes, absolutely can support that.
Okay, Nikki, where's our timekeeper? Do we have time to take another question? No. All right. Well then, that was our last question. We ran out of time. Thank you so much, Morgan. We wish you the best of luck. I'm going to put your campaign site information in the chat so everybody can have it one more time. And we wish you the best of luck. Thank you. Our next, we're going to change a little bit of the order of speakers. Tim Ryan, are you here? Tim Ryan?
Give me 1 second. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Anyway, while
Shall I go ahead and introduce him, or shall I wait until?
No, go ahead and let's go ahead and introduce him.
Okay. It is my honor to introduce Congressman Tim Ryan. He has represented some Ohio congressional districts since 2003. First, it was the Ohio 17th, and then redistricting bit in 2013 again, and it's been the 13th district ever since. When he's not in Washington, though, Tim lives just down the road from the house he grew up in Niles, Ohio. With those Ohio roots, Tim brings a passionate support of working families to the table. That translates to revitalizing American manufacturing and the fair wage jobs that it will bring to Ohio. But there's more on a national level. Congressman Ryan, the floor is yours.
Hey, thank you to everybody. Really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you here. Hope you all are doing well. We're very excited about this race here in Ohio. You know, we've got a great opportunity to win a seat here in an industrial state that would go a long way to us being able to secure the Senate in a way that we could actually get a lot of these legislative initiatives passed. So appreciate the opportunity to share with you a little bit. You know, we've been traveling the whole state. I think we've been to 80 of the 88 counties, you know, and really what we're hearing on the ground is pretty consistent to what, you know, I understand from growing up in just outside of Youngstown. I grew up in Niles, Ohio, and my wife is a first grade school teacher. We have 3 kids. Mason's 19, Bella is 18 in her senior year of high school, and Brady is 7.5. He'll be 8 in June. And really, you know, growing up in outside of Youngstown, we understand that people are working harder than ever before, and they're still struggling. You know, even with the wages going up, that's all getting eaten up by inflation right now. People are hurting, and they really feel like the system, for good reason, is stacked against them. And we've seen in Ohio over the last 30 or 40 years the loss of a significant amount of manufacturing jobs. You know, we've seen increased inequality, a huge opiate heroin, and now issue with fentanyl. So, you know, our kids, our infrastructure, we've got to make investments to rebuild, you know, our state and country. And I see this really as a time, you know, where we can't really be Democrats or Republicans. We have to really understand that America has to rebuild itself. America has to play a role in the world and shaping the world. And we can't do that unless we get back to having a robust middle class. Our greatest weapon over the decades of this country was our middle class, and we've lost it. And so we've got to make efforts like we've been doing with infrastructure. I can't tell you how many counties I go to, how many communities I go to where the number one issue for them is broadband. Their kids are driving to a McDonald's, or they have to drive their kids to a McDonald's to literally download their homework because they don't have access to high-speed internet. And I, you know, try to make the point, you know, we're a country of 330 million. We're competing directly with China, 1.4 billion people. There's no way we're going to win that competition if we have our kids driving to McDonald's to download their homework. You know, there's no way that we're going to win that competition unless we invest into our schools and into our skills and into STEM education and help American companies, you know, reshore some of these jobs. And we've had some success, and I'll just leave it at this because I know we have limited time for you guys to ask me questions, but we're really working hard to dominate the industries of the future. So Ohio has, you know, for the industrial age, dominated steel production, auto, rubber in Akron, glass in Toledo, aerospace in Southwest Ohio, energy and agriculture in the southern part of the state. And so we need to go all in and try to dominate these industries of the future. Electric vehicles, electric trucks, batteries, charging stations, wind, solar. Those are real opportunities for us. We just landed the Intel project, which is going to end up being, if we play our cards right, $100 billion investment to transform Ohio into a leading chip manufacturer. The average wage is going to be $135,000 a year. It's going to take about 7,000 union construction jobs. That's the future for Ohio. But if we don't have these robust investments to make sure we're plugging people in, plugging in all the communities of Ohio, we're going to have a two-tiered society. You know, we're going to have the haves and the have-nots, and the haves are going to be, you know, a small percentage of the broader economy. And so that's what we're fighting for. And I look forward to an opportunity to share a little bit more with you, and would welcome any questions that you have.
All right. Our first question is from Rebecca Lammers, the head of our DA Taxation Task Force. Rebecca.
Hi, Tim. I have the same question as the last, I asked the last speaker. Do you want me to repeat the question, or did you hear it before?
Yes, if you could. I wasn't on for that. So if you could repeat the question, that'd be great.
Okay, I'll repeat part of it. So Democrats Abroad does a lot of work to educate everyday Americans abroad that voting is a federal right, and regardless of their tax status, they have a right to vote. So this is why where Americans are truly resident abroad, Democrat Abroad supports elimination of double filing and double taxation on non-US sourced income, and the exemption of Americans abroad and non-US bank accounts from having to report accounts to the US. So will you support this relief for Americans abroad?
Yeah, it sounds like something I would support. I'd have to look into the details of it, but it absolutely, my staff mentioned it to me before I got on this call. I'd like to look at it closer, but you know, anytime we're cutting taxes for working people, I'm all in on that. So it sounds like it would be something I would support, but I just don't want to give you 100% commitment without actually looking at it myself and being able to do a little research. But yeah, it doesn't sound fair. And anytime I feel like working class people are taking it on the chin, we're going to be there to fight for you.
Well, we're certainly happy to discuss these issues with you, and we want to be a resource for you as well. So I'll very happy to follow up with them, with your staff to inform them more about the issue.
All right. Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you.
Our next question, I'm actually going to ask our next question. It's about climate change. And this question comes from the Progressive Caucus and our Environmental Council. Climate change factors, not the least of the rising temperatures and severe weather incidents, are becoming a serious economic and social stress factors. We seem to be faced with a balancing act between promoting business, combating climate change, and repairing our environment. What must our executive and legislative branches do to address these pressing issues? And how will you help if you're elected Ohio's next senator?
Yeah, you know, having 3 young kids, I'm very, very concerned about this as well. Certainly don't want to leave them a planet that we didn't kind of repair for them. And I think we have an obligation to do that. I, for one, do not think that, you know, I think it's a false choice to say that we have to either be all in on the environment or all in for the business community. I think there is a hell of an opportunity for us in the country. And this is the frustrating part for me, who has, you know, seen by many as a blue collar guy from a blue collar town and fighting for blue collar workers, is that we are failing to give workers an opportunity to really move into industries that are growing like crazy. And we need, and this is part of the Build Back Better that I thought was really, really important, is the research and development around the technologies of the future, about how we can reuse and recycle materials, how we can recycle batteries, how we can, a smart grid, how we grow our food, how we use water to grow our food, how we move to regenerative agriculture, how we start using cover crops, how there's so many opportunities for us to make this happen. And we are not leading at the level that we need to be leading, which is one of the reasons I want to go to the United States Senate. I think one more vote in the Senate that understands both the worrisomeness of climate, the scary part of climate, but also the opportunities that are there. And I see Ohio very well positioned because of who we are, where we are, our legacy around manufacturing. We have First Solar is a huge solar company up in Toledo. They have a 2,000 square foot expansion. In the Youngstown area, Foxconn just bought an old auto plant. They have an electric truck company in one side of the plant, an electric vehicle on the other side of the plant. Across the street, General Motors has a battery plant, a partnership with LG Chem from South Korea for the batteries of the future. And so I try to tell people, like, there's 8,000 component parts to a windmill that need to be manufactured. We should be manufacturing those in Ohio. We should be manufacturing those in the United States. And one of the things Sherrod Brown and I did in the recent infrastructure bill was we got Buy American provisions to use American steel and American concrete. American steel is the cleanest steel in the world. You know, you can't say you want to go green, you want to reverse climate, and then buy Chinese steel or Indian steel, which is the dirtiest steel in the entire world. You can't say you're just going to do it on the back of manufacturing either. There's a huge agriculture play here and how we can sequester carbon into our soil. I mean, we've destroyed our soil in the United States and really around the world, putting oil-based fertilizers and chemicals on it, not properly planting crops, rotating crops. And so in this recent appropriations bill, we increased money for conservation, for cover crops, which will help us begin to sequester carbon, and really looking closely at basically a carbon sequestration tax credit for farmers. So you're both taking care of the climate issue and you're putting more money in the pockets of farmers in rural areas who have been struggling, for the last few decades. And so being creative about it is an opportunity, but we're gonna keep plugging away. And even the chip manufacturing, even the Intel plant that I mentioned, those chips, more chips go into electric trucks and electric vehicles than they do a traditional car. So we've got to be able to move in this direction. This is a job creator for us. We need to make sure the American people know it's a job creator. And again, it's not an either or, it's a both and I'll continue to fight for that in the Senate.
Thank you. Our next question is from Miguel Madrigal. He is the chair of our Youth Caucus. Miguel?
Thank you so much. Congressman Ryan, I still remember you from the 2020 presidential primary, so it's cool to finally meet a presidential candidate. I live in Costa Rica. And we are a country where getting a gun is extremely, extremely hard, and I hope it remains that way. Although in Ohio, that's not the case. One of the is the focus of the Youth Caucus is the prevalence of gun violence in schools. Too many of our young people have been dying in classrooms, in colleges, and in universities, and in elementary schools, and sadly enough, in preschool. This shouldn't be the case. So if you were in the United States Senate right now, what measures would you take to make sure this never happens again?
Well, every kid should feel safe in their school. Every citizen should feel safe in their neighborhood. Growing up with my family and raising kids, my wife's a first grade school teacher. All three of our kids went to public school. So to see what happens, Sandy Hook and so many other examples of gun violence it's heartbreaking. It's gut wrenching. And so best I could tell you about what I'll do in the Senate is to tell you what I've done in the House. I've been a original co-sponsor and have voted for and spoken out on making sure we have background checks, making sure we close the gun show loophole, making sure we close the Charleston loophole, which is how that one kid got a gun down in South Carolina and killed those people who were at church at the Mother Emanuel Church down in South Carolina. And so I've done that in the House. The problem has been those bills go to the United States Senate and they go there to die. And so we need another senator who's going to go to the Senate, who's going to win the seat here in Ohio, go to the Senate, vote to abolish the filibuster, and pass these really key pieces of legislation. And again, this is a uniquely American problem, and we need to act on it and fix it. And I will be a part of that in the Senate.
All right, thank you. One last question, and that is from Kelly. You want to go ahead and unmute?
That's me. Yeah, so three things, really. What Rebecca mentioned with the tax code and tax exemption is when it comes to Antarctica, because I worked there for a few years, it's actually technically not a country, and so you don't get the tax exemption. So anybody that actually goes there, and lives abroad for more than 330 days, you still have to pay taxes in the U.S. Even though it's dark and there's quite a mental health toll, blah blah blah. So, and that's from the Supreme Court, and that's, but I think that's a gray area that has to be revisited, especially with the service that our scientists and service members do. Okay, and then two, I'm a climate scientist, and I'm really, really happy that you mentioned climate science, because from our standpoint, we're pretty great from a Northeast Ohio standpoint. But with we have 22% of the world's fresh water available standpoint, but we don't put an actual value on our climate scientists. I'm currently in Singapore because I couldn't get a job in Northeast Ohio or the US, right? So I'm working for the Singapore government, and it's like, how do we actually value our nature-based climate solutions and our climate science and solutions when we don't put the money into and invest in our resources?
Yeah, I mean, what's number one mean?
1 minute.
1 minute. Okay. I figured. I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, we've got to prioritize it. Again, I think it's more about shifting the mindset here. Not that it's a problem, because sometimes if we just lead with how bad things are going to be and how bad things are getting, there's a lot of people too that don't have the luxury of having the time. And I get people mad at me all the time for saying this, but it's the truth. That people that are getting up early and going to work, come home late, drive 2 hours to a job site, get home at 7:30, leave at 4:45 in the morning. And I've met people like this all around Ohio with making ends meet. They don't have time to think about the really significant issues around climate, which is why we've got to talk about the opportunities and the opportunities for job creation, the opportunities for investment, the opportunities to, increase our quality of life. Yes, we got to understand what's going to happen with sea levels and immigration patterns and all of that stuff, because one of the groups in America that's most concerned about this is the United States military, because of how destabilizing it's going to be, for the world. But I think going all in, which is why smart grid, infrastructure, broadband, and then from your piece, research and development about what the future looks like. I'm getting gonged, so sorry.
Thank you very much, Tim. Good luck on the rest of the race. I'm going to put you're welcome. Appreciate
any votes, and we'll represent you all in the Senate, and be safe out there.
Yeah, you too.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ryan. And last but not least, I am very excited to introduce Traci Johnson. Traci Johnson is the head of Trabian Enterprises, which is an IT firm in Dublin, Ohio. She is an elected Central Committee woman with over 30 years of experience in Franklin County Democratic politics, numerous campaigns, and also volunteers for a ton of community service organizations. TJ, as she is known, combines her academic studies in international relations with IT experience and hands-on experience to form her goals for Ohio and the country. So TJ, take it away.
You're on mute. Sorry.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on your time zone. My name is Traci TJ Johnson. I'm running to be your next United States Senator. Now, as you see, I have a presentation, so I'm just a little different than your typical candidate. So I have to utilize the skills and talents that God has blessed me with in my arsenal to relay my message. And I figured today you'd be exhausted just listening to people. So I thought I'd provide you with something to watch. So the presentation today will provide you with a reason why I'm running for office, some background information on me as to why I'm qualified, and then we'll open the floor for any questions that you may have. So the reason that I'm running for office is because people are tired. they're frustrated, they're fed up. We've gone through 4 pandemics, the pandemic of Trump, and then there was COVID, Omicron, and Delta, which robbed us of our loved ones and our family. People want strong leaders that are looking for solutions that address our critical issues, and Ohio has a lot of them. Before going into what those issues are, let me tell you a little bit about who I am. My name is Traci T.J. Johnson. I was born of a single mom, Ellen, in the picture. I am the oldest daughter of 4 children, and I was the first person to graduate from college. My mother was a passionate teacher, and for 30 years, she taught. And when she retired, she moved in with me, and I became her caregiver for 15 years, and she recently passed at 91. I know my mother would want me to pursue my dream of being a United States Senator and representing the state of Ohio. I have over 30 years of Democratic experience. I am currently a ward committee woman. I've been a ward committee woman for 20 years, and working in the community, people are concerned about issues that impact their community, like crime and neighborhood issues. But when I decided to run for office, I realized that the issues of crime and jobs and affordable health care resonated across the entire state. And so I feel that as a current ward committee woman, I've done the work in addressing the issues of opiates and crime and criminal justice reform within my community. And now I'm capable of being able to do that across this incredible state. I've worked on extensive campaigns. Zig Ziglar said, if you work for enough people and help them get what they want, you'll get what you want. I have worked diligently in Ohio, not only as a ward committee woman, but as a dedicated Democrat, fighting for the rights of voters, fighting for working families, fighting for middle class, and turning out the vote so that people understand how important their vote is. I've been fighting against voter suppression for the past 20 years, making it understood that Republicans cannot take our voice, and our votes and our voices need to be heard at the voting booth. I bring extensive experience from the state government. I've worked for the Ohio Office of Budget and Management, where I've worked to secure the financial future of our state. I've worked for the Environmental Protection Agency, where I fought to protect our land, our air, and our water. With the governor's office on LGBT issues, I fought to protect the language that you cannot discriminate against anyone on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identification. I drafted that language, and it's now in state law. Republicans are attacking LGBT rights, and I will focus on ensuring economic equality for the LGBT community, because I have worked within the community and I am a strong advocate for LGBT rights. I've worked for the Ohio Attorney General's Office Consumer Protection Division, where I've worked to fight against illegal business practices for our Ohioans across the entire state. I've worked in the private sector and rolling out Obamacare from the application and software side of things. I've also worked globally for a global marketing company. So I understand the specific needs of working abroad and the challenges that come with living outside the United States. I've ran 2 major corporations, and I've existed in the telecom, hospital, retail, and healthcare industries. I currently am a business owner of Trabian Enterprises. It's an information technology company. We specialize in information technology staffing and artificial intelligence. 83% of information technology is made up of white men. We call it the white guys country club. African Americans make up 7% of the industry, and 3% of that 7% are African American women, and owners such as myself make up 0.05%. So we make up a half a penny. So through my work through Trabian Enterprises, I work to increase diversity in STEM And as a business owner, I understand the unique challenges that business owners face in regards to access to capital in order to grow and expand their businesses. I also am happy about the Intel investment in our backyard, bringing, it's a $20 billion investment that brings an additional 10,000 jobs in information technology. So I am happy about that investment. And when we upskill people and invest in upskilling people for these high-tech jobs, they will have the opportunity to work within the paradigm of Intel and the additional business that Intel will bring once they've landed here. Lastly, I have sat on a number of boards and commissions. I'm currently a board member of the Central Ohio African American Chamber, where we focus and advocate for African American and minority businesses and their access to capital. I am on the Columbus Zoo and Aquarium Board, where we focus on the preservation of wildlife and protect wildlife. And through my experience on the American Red Cross and Medical Reserve Corps, I am uniquely qualified in crisis management. I'm trained in public health and natural disasters like biochemical warfare, terrorism, chemical spills. So your next United States Senator comes with a toolkit of expertise. I'm a public servant, a humanitarian, a staunch Democrat, a technologist, a business owner, and a previous elected and an elected official. In today's changing times, you need a candidate that has a variety of skill sets so that we're able to tackle all the problems and all the challenges that face Ohioans and make our economy better so that we can grow together and make Ohio a better place to live. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we'll take a couple of questions. Our first question is from Miguel Madrigal. He's our Youth Caucus chair. Miguel?
Hi, Tracy. Can I call you TJ?
My friends call me TJ, so if you consider yourself a friend, by all means.
Okay, I'm a friend of any Democrat, so TJ it is. So if you are elected our next United States Senator, what measures will you take to encourage young school-aged girls to dive themselves into STEM careers?
So through my work at Trabian Enterprises, we focus on encouraging people into STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. I currently work in cooperation with Ohio University with their Department of Arts and Sciences, yes. So when I speak to colleges, we're encouraging them and sharing with them that there are new possibilities in STEM that will bridge them into information technology. A lot of people don't know that STEM is a catalyst to information technology jobs. So through information technology, you can become an engineer, a mathematician, a scientist. All those opportunities also are on the information technology side. We share educational awareness regarding the fact that if you specialize in, if you attend a school and you specialize in a STEM program, you can graduate with that certification, become an IT consultant, and emerge directly into an information technology career by utilizing that career path. So we spend a lot of time educating people regarding the simplicity of identifying a trade in this STEM sector and how it can transition into a high-paying information technology job in various sectors, whether it's clean energy, whether it's advanced technology, whether it's in regular technology, or whether it's in any other industry. So it's encouraging people to learn more about the industry. It's sharing the possibilities within the industry. It's ensuring awareness regarding the opportunities that exist within the industry. And then it's being a catalyst to help people go from where they are academically into the space. Lastly, if you're not interested in attending a 2-year college or getting a 4-year degree, in the tech space, you can go to a coding school or boot camp or an apprenticeship or a trade school, spend 8 to 12 weeks in a program, graduate with a certification in information technology, and immediately go into the job market at a higher paying job. So there's so many options within information technology and within STEM that a lot of people don't know about, that we have to educate them so that they're aware.
Thank you. Our next question is from Rebecca Lammers, our taxation leader.
Hi, TJ. It's very nice to meet you.
Hello.
So Democrats Abroad does a lot of work to educate everyday Americans abroad that voting is a federal right, and regardless of their tax status, they have a right to vote. So this is why, where Americans are truly resident abroad, Democrats Abroad supports elimination of double filing and double taxation on non-US sourced income, and the exemption of Americans abroad and non-US banks from having to report accounts to the US. Will you support this relief for Americans abroad?
So I want to say that Rebecca and I had an extremely engaging conversation. So let me explain how I govern as an elected, as a president of a information technology company. Rebecca provided us with the back sheet regarding the issues that impact Democrats abroad. I typically enjoy doing the research that comes with issues that I'm not aware of. And we spent probably half hour to 40 minutes on the phone, kind of diving into what the real issues are, because I wasn't familiar that Democrats abroad had issues. And that's the wonderful thing about running for office, because you learn so much about so many different things. So first, let me thank Rebecca for taking the time. Rebecca, I thank you for your advocacy on behalf of Democrats abroad and for taking the time to educate your electeds and your future electeds on the issues that impact all Ohioans, whether they're in the United States or outside. Rebecca shared with me that there is a lot of time that's taken to complete these applications. And I did a little research. 11 hours is ridiculous. The double taxing, the compliance, the cost, and the fear. I had no idea that all of this was an issue, and that these are the things that you were dealing with. And I looked to see what exactly had already been implemented in regards to these issues. And I found, and again, Rebecca, thank you for providing me with information regarding the Tax Filing Simplification Act. But I also found that Congressman Brad Sherman did a companion bill that was similar. And it was interesting because Tim signed off on, Congressman Ryan had signed off on that bill, which basically supports resolving this serious issue regarding some of the tax codes, the complications with the tax codes. Once elected as your United States Senator, I will fight for Ohioans in the United States and outside the United States. Any issues or problems that you're having that impedes you doing your job, getting the benefits that you deserve, having the issue of being double taxed and having fear of voting, these issues need to be resolved. These issues need to be brought to light, and more people need to be on board regarding the resolution. So I can't totally commit to creating, I know, Rebecca, your request was to introduce legislation. I don't like to make promises I can't keep. But what I can promise you is that with the help of Rebecca and Democrats from abroad, I will work with you to make sure your issues are brought to light. And through that light, we can create what we need to make your life easier. That is what I know I can do. And that's the commitment that I can give. Of course, I want to wave my fairy dust on it and make it all go away. But realistically, I want to work with you to make sure we get the job done right. I need time to understand the tax codes. Senator Sherman, Congressman Sherman is a CPA. I'm an IT girl. And so I need time to kind of dig down into these tax codes and find out what we can do to tweak what we need, to change what we need, to reform what we need to do to make life easier and better for you abroad. That's my commitment.
Thank you very much. We have one more question from Kenton Barnes, if you want to unmute.
Hi, Tracy. My name is Kenton Barnes, and I'm glad to see another Toledoan here. I'm sure that our families know each other, but that's neither here nor there. My question for you is regarding mass transit and the funding of Amtrak. As you know, in Ohio, particularly in Toledo, we have all these troubles with mass transit, and they're being underfunded, which prohibits a lot of people being able to access jobs because the underfunding doesn't give them the capability to have enough transit and able to have jobs outside of certain areas. And the same thing with Amtrak. We've always talked about expanding Amtrak throughout the state of Ohio, particularly in Toledo, because that would be a very important job sector in Toledo. What would you do about addressing the problems of underfunding for mass transit and for Amtrak in Ohio?
So we need to fund mass transit because namely because we have jobs that need to be filled, and those jobs aren't necessarily filled by the people in those areas. Currently, we have 500,000 jobs that remain unfilled. A lot of that is because we don't have the transportation to get people into those higher paying jobs. Now, that's either locally or across the state. There's been conversation about bridging that divide through transportation. So if Toledo has renewable energy jobs, then people from Cincinnati can jump on mass transportation and get to those jobs outside of their communities. We need mass transit for a number of reasons. People in communities of color and lower economic communities need that transportation to get to better housing and to get to grocery stores where they have vegetables, because within those communities, we have what is referred to as food deserts. Seniors within those communities have a hard time getting to their doctors because of the lack of quality transportation. Ohio is about to bust open. We have jobs in renewable energy right now. And we're talking, when we say renewable energy, we're talking solar, wind, biomass, hydropower. We have jobs busting open in the advanced technology sector. That's hybrid cars and electric vehicles. We have Intel in our backyard, $20 billion investment, 10,000 jobs. Manufacturing is looking at an additional 20 million jobs between now and 2030. How are we going to get that skilled talent to these locations? One area will not be able to service the needs for employment. And in order for us to build our economy, we have to get people back to work. And when we look at how do we get people back to work, transportation is a serious issue that needs to be addressed. I need Ohio's economic base to be substantial, and I need it to grow. So that means looking at how we utilize transportation within our cities, how we utilize transportation in our state, and how we utilize transportation across our cities.
Wow, well, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Tracy. Thanks to all of our candidates. I'm going to put everyone's information, all the links that we've talked about for every person in the chat. Please remember to request your absentee ballot if you haven't already done it, and ask for it to come by email. Once you get it, if you want to vote in the primaries, of course, and in the general, vote it immediately and send it back, because Ohio ballots can only be returned by postal mail or a courier service. And postal mail, still the same situation it was in 2020. Nothing's changed. It might even be slower now. Please, of course, consider joining our Ohioans Abroad Facebook group. It's a great place where people from Ohio can get together and find out more information. Take a look at our video from the Ohio Action Hour from the event last weekend. Remember, we can't win without money, so please donate. democratsabroad.org/donate. You can share the link of the live video from Facebook Live. It's also there. There's a link for the Democratic Party of Ohio, all the candidates, Nan Whaley, John Cranley, Morgan Harper, Tim Ryan, Traci Johnson, all their campaign sites. Please also thank my team members, Nikki and Karen. Thank you so much for everything that you've done. Thanks for everyone who showed up today. And remember, if you got to vote or we won't win, because we can win Ohio this time. I am really sure of it. There's a clip of the Republicans running for the Senate that I posted in the Ohio group, and they're bickering like they're on the Jerry Springer show. And if you're from Ohio, you know Jerry Springer is from Ohio too. So, yeah. So we can do it, but we're going to need everyone to vote. And you need to make sure you get all your friends and family that are Democrats to vote. Not that Republicans shouldn't vote, but they can figure it out on their own. Make sure all your Ohio Democrats vote, because we, as it was said, I think it was Tim Ryan that said, Obama won Ohio twice. So it's not a joke. And when I was a kid, Ohio was a Democratic state. So we can do that again. Nikki, Karen, would you like to add something before we end?
I just want to say, one of the things you want to do is to reach back and get back in touch with the home folks, whether that's somebody who's running for an office, whether it's a county chair in your county, or whether it's one of the allied groups that's been working with the Democrats throughout the redistricting hassle, but now coming up into the campaigns, yard signs, postcards, phone calls, whatever. Whatever you do, find out about the issues, share our issues with them. It's really energizing, because I don't know, there's just something about the hands across the water that make a big difference.
Yeah, Nikki?
And really quick, I would just add, we heard a lot earlier today from our chair, Liz Walters at ODP, regarding the redistricting and the ballots. Please make sure you are checking our Facebook pages, our emails. I know everyone's getting a lot of emails right now, but the ones that we are sending from DA, particularly our Ohio team, are going to make sure that you are updated about when to expect your ballot, if there are any changes in the deadlines, if there's any changes in how you need to get your ballot back, because we want to make sure that you have the opportunity to get your ballot and to vote your ballot. So also, if you have not requested your ballot yet this year, go to votefromabroad.org. They will make sure that you are set up with that request. And please look out for our emails as we update you for what's happening back in Ohio with redistricting.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you everybody for attending. I know that was probably a little bit longer than what we had anticipated, but I think it was well worth it. Got a lot of good information about candidates, and honestly, it might be a little hard to decide who you're going to vote for. Because we're Democrats. We're good people. We're not Republicans, where people are dishonest, or at least mostly not dishonest. Mostly not dishonest. So, thank you everyone for this evening, and have a great rest of your day, evening, night, whatever it is where you are. Thanks for coming. Bye.